My Govanen Melonin, and well met indeed. I am Arachir Galadirthan, the head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer. And welcome back to Divide and Conquer as we continue on with the faction overview. And again, and this time, with the Vale of Dorwinion in version 2.2. So, with no ado, how big is your starting domain and your starting army? Well, interestingly, your starting domain isn't that grand. You have 4 regions: Naburka, Strondost, Karasant, and Santanwi. They're all present on the screen there. But your army size is actually a little bigger for the amount of regions you have than you might expect. Primarily because of Norway in this fort up here. He is the sole representative of the elven aspect of Dorwinion at the start of the game, and he comes with a couple of units of Avari warriors and shadows, which, given that you already start with a few units in each town, there's a couple there in Santanui, a couple in Karasant. Strondost has a unit of, well, only trash, unfortunately, and there's also only trash in Naburka, but the addition of Norway's little army gives you quite a boost in the early game, actually. Gives you the ability to head out and attack and take whoever you want, really, which is very nice. Oh, apologies, sorry. That seems to have solved my concerns there. So, 4 provinces to start, and an okay-ish army. It's not huge. I mean, when I said it's better than you might think, it's still not gargantuan, but it's a big enough starting army to help you take some early settlements. Your capital is Karasant, which means the City of Gardens, or the Garden City. Karasant, City of Gardens. And your leader is within Vine Regent Howin, faction leader, there he is. Now this is what your faction leader looks like, in the golden armour of the Earls of Dale. Your faction heir is Vine Lord Swain, and this is what a generic Dorwinion general looks like, with the chainmail and helmet, or mail, as I keep getting told off for the way that I say things. Vine Lord Swain there, and then a captain for Dorwinion. It looks like this gentleman just here. He looks like the kind of a version of their Thorn Guard units, but just purple, not red. Although I'm pretty sure the Thorn units are now actually purple and are not red. But anyway, so this is just whoever is your faction leader will always look like that, regardless of who they are. That is not unique to Vine Regent Howin. The unique building that your diplomats come out of is the Vintner Court in Karasant, which gives you a few bonuses, cost bonuses, and an order bonus there as well. And that gives you your diplomat. I believe that is the only unique building, though. Santanui does not have one. Certainly at the start, you may be able to build something here a little later on. Strondost and Naburka don't have anything either. Custom bodyguards, then. There are actually a few. So, Vine Regent Howin, 68, has High Paladins, which is actually the standard bodyguard for Dorwinion. Vine Lord Swain has the same, High Paladins. But there are differences with Forthwin and with Athel here. Forthwin down here guarding Strondost, who is the Grand Master of Karas Falathrim, which needs to change because it's not called that anymore. He has a unit of Regent's Spear Guard. So one of your strong units, and basically an attempt to show you some of your elites, some of your human elites, should Norway and his forces be the way that you go, which we'll discuss more in a moment. And Athel here has Rangers. Oh, and he takes a long time to come out of Naburka. The whole game at the moment for me, I apologise, I don't know why, but it's going really slowly when I move around the campaign map and stuff, so it's lucky that we're not actually ending turn or playing properly. But he has a Thala Rangers, and he's actually called Athel here, so a link to his unit. So you get an Archer General there, you get a Spear General down in the south, and then 2 standard bodyguards on your faction Lord, your faction Heir, and your faction Ruler. Rebel expansion, before we touch on your obvious neighbour, is of course to the west. Karvarad, Vilter, Othelbed, further afield, Råberg, Ilanin, and then maybe even Logarth are all options for you. As you can see, this is at turn 1, so the auto expansion has taken place. So all of Central Rovanion is up for the taking, and you can be the one to take it. Alternatively, if you wish, you can cross over the River Running, the Kelduin, and you can go into Kondovan, Talathang, and maybe even try and take Wintirian Yor. The choices are yours. You'll note Burmalinge has already been taken by Dale, but they're slow to move, and they're a bit of a weird faction, to be honest. And obviously north of them is the dwarves. And speaking of your neighbours then, your immediate neighbour is of course Rune, who have left already when they are played by the AI at turn number 2. They border you from the south, but they probably will swiftly take Wintirian Yor and be bordering you from the north, providing you do cross the Kelduin and take Kondovan. They also are very, very fond, or certainly they were in the early days. I'm not sure with a few more regions in Ravania and how they deal with it, but they used to absolutely love taking Othelbed and rocking right up to Saint-Anouilh. So do watch out for Rune, of course. But do note that at the start of the game, you're not allied or at war with them. And neither are Dale. And the reason that I make that link for you is because if you want to, you can try to ally with Rune. There is nothing stopping you. In previously, you wouldn't be able to because Dale was at war with Rune and you were allied to Dale, which meant you could not ally to Rune. However, you now can. So that's a little diplomatic change. Obviously, if you do ally with Rune, your campaign, unfortunately, will be an absolute doddle. But you will then at least get to fight against Dale and Erebor, because I'm assuming that's why you'd ally with Rune, to go semi-evil, if you will. So that option's available. Further north, as I've already said, there's Erebor and Dale, and to the west you almost certainly will come across the forces of Dol Guldur as you play through, because they very frequently stretch out to the east, and Dorwinion often leans over to the west, and so they meet each other somewhere around the Lake of Logarth, war kicks off, which is a shame because Dol Guldur can be quite the grind and quite the slow enemy to fight, whereas of course you've got a bit of time taking down Rune if that's what you wish to do. So economy and buildings then, well, Dorwinion are Northmen. Your culture is Northmen, and you can build everything, I am of the understanding. Yes, there we are. No restrictions. You can get large city, you can get strongholds. Of course, as noted there, the Masons building is required to upgrade to the highest tiers in cities, so do look out for that if you are wondering why you can't build something. So you're going to be quite well off in terms of economy, owing to the fact that you can just get the most useful economic buildings. Additionally, Dorwinion is one of the wealthier factions. Now, interestingly, this is one, Dorwinion, depending on how Rune do and how well you attack them, Dorwinion can actually be quite a challenging campaign, and even though you make obscene amounts of money, it can still be a difficult one to fight. And the reason I say you make an awful lot of money is twofold. Number one, you get a lot of wine resources in and around Dorwinion, and indeed you just get a lot of resources. So once you start getting trade rights with various places, these regions start to absolutely blow up in terms of money. There's so many exports in Western and Eastern Dorwinion that these two are just insane. But also, you may have noticed there when I was on the building browser, a building called the Wine Depository. And also the Winery, which is listed at the bottom, perhaps? Yes, it is. There it is. So, two unique buildings for Dorwinion. However, one is under certain events only. I wonder if we can show it from this one. Yeah, there we are. So the winery comes in two tiers, a winery and a vintner's guildhouse, and you'll note that it is very useful. So the first tier gives you just an increase in tradable goods standard, 65 on the building income as a flat rate, culture increase bonus, and a bonus to happiness. And then the vintner's guildhouse takes that to the next level and more than quadruples your building income, or it's 10 gold underneath quadrupling your building income. So we'll call it quadruple. At 250. Your population growth bonus, however, then is less. Sorry, that's me just getting completely confused because it's 6:30. It gains then a population increase bonus, and your culture increase goes up by 1%. And the happiness is doubled to 10. So this is an outstanding economic building. And very useful to get indeed. And then, of course, as already mentioned, there is then the Wine Depository. Now, the Wine Depository is, again, at the first tier. Unfortunately, I can't show you the second tier because it requires a script, which we'll touch upon in the next section. But this increases your tradable goods and gives you a number of free upkeep. And then there's a second tier of this building, if you wish to go for it, that vastly increases your wealth from Coruscant only. So Coruscant will always make you an awful lot of money, and given on the various buildings, it will do well. Now do note that the winery is only available in any region that has wine as a resource. Wine is denoted by the vineyard, which is the one with the largest manor house, and then the nice 4 laid out vine. I don't know what they're called. Are they called fields? Are they called like rows or something? Because I've seen grapes growing, and they are in rows. Anyway, that's denotes wine, and so anywhere that has that, you will get the winery. There's Eastern Dorwinions, and there's one up there as well. There's one over there. So the winery isn't the most common building because wine is not a common resource now, because it's one of the wealthier ones. So it's not you're not gonna be able to build it everywhere, but every now and then you'll get it and you'll think, oh, that's a nice little boost, and it's useful to build it wherever you can because of that nice 250 gold boost that the second tier comes with. In terms of smithing, you get level 4 smithing. However, again, should you do something in a moment, it can go up to level 5 smithing, and you actually do get visual changes for most of your human units. Oh, and I forgot to talk about Norway a bit more, sorry. Norway comes with a custom bodyguard and a custom strategy map model. And there he is, Norway. Avarin High Councillor, and he comes with Morikwendi Sentinels, the elite archers for the elves. He is an outstanding general, absolutely outrageous. I mean, these units are getting up there in terms of Eldarinwe, Elbereth Sentinels, Hirebang, Hiribang, the archers of Mirkwood. So he's just incredible. I also would encourage you just to have a little read of the High Councillor and the Scout, and generally any of the biographies for Dorwinion, because vanity reasons really. I wrote all of Dorwinion's fictitious lore, because we know nothing about Dorwinion, just to touch on the lore of the nation. All we know is that it is here, and having now been to the Tolkien exhibit and seen many of his maps, there are many, many, many places where he writes the word Dorwinion and then points an arrow to this area. So we know that it is here. But all we know is that they are famous for making wine, and that Thranduil famously drinks their wine that is sailed up to him on the river, and then the barrels are sent back. Outside of that, though, we know nothing about them. And so, as with most fictitious lore aspects in DaC, what we've done is we've taken the very small thing that we know about them and based their entire culture on it. So, as you will see from the next section, for example, your trash units are called Vineyard, your faction leader is called Vine Regent, your unique building is called the Vintner Court, your elite units are called Paladins and Knights of the Vintner Court. So we've made wine the core focus of the faction. But the other aspect of the faction is, of course, the elves. And that's where we come on to the script. So to start with the basic script, as with everyone else, Dorwinion's garrison comes from the armory now. You will need to build this building in order to get garrison troops for free when your city is attacked. You only get 1 garrison unit from the first tier, normally, sometimes it is 2. And you get as standard, again, normally, 2 units from the second tier, sometimes 3. And it also costs you 100 gold per turn in that settlement. But again, it works like the happiness bonus. So if all of your settlements added up together gave you 1,000 gold coins and you built this building, it would not necessarily take your income down to 900. Instead, what it would do is it would take somewhere like Coruscant and see that it is earning 1,637 every turn, and it would take 100 away from that. So if Coruscant, for example, was unable to... If Coruscant was making no money, 0 money, then the armory would have absolutely no effect. Because there'd be nothing to take that 100 from. Also note, as the scroll was just showing you there, the minus 100 will only take away from building income. So because it can only stay within its category. So what I mean by that is you can see that the buildings are flashing. So at the minute we've got a building making us 50 gold coins, which is the inn. By building the armory, we will then lose the inn's income, but our trade and our taxes and our farming are unaffected. It can only take away from building income. So if I were to then, for example, build the grain exchange immediately after building the armory, then the armory is negating the grain and the inn's income completely. And then the next building that I build that will give money will give me money, because that 100 has then been accounted for. So if you're, not only does your town doesn't even have to not make money, if your town has no buildings that have the fixed building income, then the armory will not even take money away from you, and there's nothing that we can do about that, I'm afraid. So it's I suppose what we should do is make its bonus more negative, so that the more buildings that you build that give a fixed income, the less use they are. But anyway, that's a full description of the armory. Should have saved that for another video, because this one's already going to be bloody lengthy. Anyway then, so the only other script for Dorwinion, of course, is the choice. Now the choice used to be a bit more complicated, but we have since simplified it. And it is now a very straightforward choice. You make one choice. I didn't look up the turn time because it doesn't really matter. It will come. I think it's about turn 60, because I think it comes just before the barracks event. But I could be wrong, and it could be about 80 coming after the barracks event. But anyway, the choice is simply, do you go with the humans or do you go with the elves? Important things to note from this. Number one, if you side with the elves, your culture will not change. You remain Northmen. So you won't change to Elven. And this is because whilst it would be thematic and work wonderfully, in practice it would just mean that for a very long time, quite late in the game, or quite close to the barracks event, you would totally neuter yourself, because all of a sudden your culture would be storming Northmen everywhere. So by turn 60 or so, your heartlands will all be up in the 80% of Northmen. And then all of a sudden you switch to Elven, which will be down in the 10s, 5s, somewhere around that. And so you can't even now train your most basic trash units. And so whilst it would work wonderfully thematically, it totally cripples you, and so we don't add that in. So you will stay Northmen, you just politically align with the elves. And there are two aspects to the choice. The first is that your army roster then is either Elven or human in the late game only. And then the second one is that there are two unique buildings that can then be built. So I should have covered them in this bit rather than the other one, I suppose. But oh, and I tell you what I did not do is tell you that you get the Warriors Guild. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Right, what are we after? I saw it in the in Coruscant, I think. Yes, Dorwinion Academy. So if you side with the elves, this is deemed the more military option, and you unlock in Saint-Anouilh only the Avarin War Academy and then the Avarin Elder Academy, which reduces retraining costs in Saint-Anouilh, morale bonus there, and 6 recruitment slots are then given to Saint-Anouilh to turn it into a real recruitment centre. Now remember that a recruitment slots works as a first past the post system and not a not collectively. So if you have 2 buildings both getting 2 slots, you actually only have 2 slots. And then if you build another building that has 3 slots, you then have 3 slots. They don't add together. It's not cumulative. Anyway, so then the Avarin Elder Academy gives you that same 6 bonus, 6 recruitment slots, but then the morale bonus goes to 6, and you then get an experience bonus for archers and for cavalry. So it's quite useful in making Saint-Anouilh a real, as I say, recruitment centre. You then also unlock the 5th tier of smithing. Now this doesn't unlock an extra blacksmith, and instead in the armourer there's just an additional upgrade then unlocks for you if you side with the elves. And as I say, it turns most of your lower tier units golden with a visual armour change, so it's just a nice one. It's just, it is good fun. Elven units are good, but not very numerous, and they take a long time to train. So you'll have elite but small armies. If you side with the humans, you get not elite, although there are some in there that are elite, but they're nowhere near as good as the Morroquendi. But you get a lot more choice. There are a lot more units on the human side than there are on the elven side, and they are available more readily, and their replenishment is slower, which is saying the same thing in different ways. Also, if you side with the humans, the wine depository, which as you will note is currently listed even though you can't actually build it, and that is because the wine depository requires that you have sided with the humans. And so the first tier and the second tier are both locked until you choose the human choice. And that's really all there is to it. So it's a very simple question. Do you side with the elves or do you side with the humans in Dorwinion? And then if you side with the elves, it's a bit more military focused. If you side with the humans, it's a bit more monetary focused. But the basic core choice is, do you want a lot of units but they're not as good as maybe your units could be? Or do you want only a few units but they're very good? And that's the choice. And that's all the scripts for Dorwinion as well. So major map changes from the previous version. There's a lot has happened up here, as you will note. Burm Island has been made slightly smaller, and the large region that was called something totally different has been replaced with Kondovan and Talathang. Winterior is unchanged. Skarn is also unchanged. So Talathang has been added, basically. It used to be up here, but it was totally wasted, so we added it over there. In addition, of course, Ravanion has been massively broken up. Carvarad used to be all of this large region here, and now that's been broken up with Vilta, Logarth, and the addition, of course, of Ostinaru, and Dorthalu, or just all of it. It's just all been changed. Or Ostinaru and Carvarad were the ones originally here, so Vilta, Logarth, and Dorthalu have all been added. And there's been various changes. Of course, there's a lake now with a couple of rivers giving more checkpoints or choke points. Indeed, there's now a river that runs all the way down to the Black Gate. So if you want to take the Black Gate and stop Rune from swarming all over you, you can stand on that bridge there, and they have to go all the way up there to get around you, which gives you a lot of time to see them coming. I think that's about it really in terms of changes. Oh well, of course, Naburka never used to exist in 0.52 or whichever one was the last one, the major one. It existed at one time and then it was taken away, and then we've brought it back, and now it is staying. But it does mean that if you get all of the regions around the Sea of Rune, you can make an awful lot of money with trading with just yourself. It's insane, really. But there we are. So, as I say, tips and difficulty. It all depends on how well Rune do. If you rush them and you can kill them off early, maybe by regicide if you're lucky, or just by winning ridiculous victory after ridiculous victory, and you beat them early, then the campaign is a complete doddle, no challenges whatsoever. If you ally with Rune and you take on Dale and Erebor, take on both of them, then there might be some challenge in there for you, because you're fighting against a nation who really outclasses you with the amount of armor piercing and high armor units they have. Whereas Dale, you're very much on par with. Alternatively, you could, if you just play normally and you don't rush Rune, it'll be a real challenge, because you'll have Rune attacking you for a long time and grinding you down, and then eventually Dol Guldur will arrive and they will attack you. So it can go either way, really. It depends on what, again, as with every faction, it depends what you do as to how easy Dorwinion will be. But it's a nation that I would categorise as fairly straightforward. I wouldn't put them, even if Rune attack you all the time, I wouldn't say Dorwinion are a hard nation to play as. And one of the primary reasons for this is that Rune is very, very keen to not come into Dorwinion from the north. Because remember, they are at war with the dwarves straight away, so they focus often on the dwarves. They'll take Winterior and they tend to stop about there. But if they do move further on, they will go for the dwarves and they'll go for Dale. They tend to avoid your northern side. And on your southern side, the bridge that Forthwin is currently standing on is the only access point on the east of the mountains of Dorwinion into Dorwinion. So you can hold Rune almost indefinitely, where Forthwin is standing, while your secondary army runs around Ravanion and just mops up all these rebel regions, giving you a much stronger base. It also should be noted that Strondost is but 2 regions away from Mistrand, their capital, and if you take Lest and Mistrand, you've taken their 2 most useful settlements. All of their other settlements, granted, aren't villages, but they're only towns, and they don't have any infrastructure at all, really, no real buildings built. Now, you can see they've all got roads, but as an invading army, roads are just as much a blessing as you might think they are a malus, because they allow you to traverse through the enemy's lands. So if you can take Lest quickly and Mistrand quickly, you totally destroy Rune, essentially, because these 2 are the ones that are actually going to be giving them troops. So that's the campaign overview. Now we can jump over to the unit side and see what kind of roster we have available to us. Welcome then to the battle map for the Vale of Dorwinion. Now this one is a bit tricky to give a quick overview because of course Team 2 are the human units that you unlock and Team 3 are the elven units that you unlock. So when you're looking at your late game elites, it looks like you've got loads of options. 4 units of archers, 2 units of cavalry, 5 units of elite footmen. When in truth, it's 2 archers and 3 footmen and 1 cavalry. Or it's 1 cavalry, 2 footmen and 2 archers. But in any event, your archers are always relatively well covered as Dorwinion. You've always got a lot of foot options and you have got choices in the cavalry options as well. But not everything is covered. So we'll start with the units that you get no matter who you choose, and these are all of those in Team 1. So these are units that are available whether you're elven or human. And starting us off are the Vineyard Levies. So Vineyard Levies are just trash spearmen. 2 attack, 2 charge, 6 defense. They're better than Snagger, but they're not as good as other early tier units. Certainly, obviously, of course, in places like Gondor, Dol Amroth, Erebor. Your Northmen. So your infantry to start with is basic. But they look relatively good. They look much better than they did when they first started, with very odd tunics, let's just say that. Whereas they now have whatever they're wearing. They now have leathers, and they just look a bit better. They're supported by Vineyard Archers, or Vineyard Bowmen as they are, who are, again, trash. 2 melee, 2 missile, only a 3 defense. If the enemy arrives at this unit, they will simply die and run away. Die or run away. They have poor morale response, same as the Vineyard units, not doing very well. Dorwinion units tend to get a bonus certainly in forest. They like snow, owing to living near the mountains, but they do not like deserts. Unaffected by grassland, though, no benefits there. Do note these people's accuracy is low. They only have 150 meter range and 18 arrows. So they're not very good, but they are at least a trash unit to soak up damage to start with. But then we come to the Thorn units, and these make up the core of your army, the bulk of your army. Starting with the melee forces, there are Thorn Bladesmen, just over here. And they are just dependable swordmen. Now these are about as good as Gondor Militia, to give you an idea. So not going to be winning you certainly any awards at this tier, but a 6 attack is nice, coupled with a 10 defense, and now we have average morale and average morale response, which is quite good. Supporting them are the Thorn Guard, who are halberdiers. They are not pikes. I think they were one, and then we swapped them to the other, but I can't remember which way round it is. But I'm fairly certain. No, because they'd be in shield wall to start with. I think they are halberdiers. They are not pikes, but they get a bonus against mounts. Things like average morale response, 8 defense, 3 attack. They're not incredible, but if you can defend their flanks, they will give you a nice defensive bonus, and they'll certainly chew through any cavalry that the enemy brings forth, which is always very nice. You also have a unit of archers now, but they are crossbowmen, Thorn crossbowmen. Terrible melee and defense stats with only 3 and 6, but their missile attack of 7 and being effective against armor as crossbows are, with average morale response, means that they will they are one of your key early units, because they will bring down the elite armor of Rune and the dwarves if you take on the dwarves. But of course you've got to maneuver them to get them into positions to actually be useful. They're terrible if they have to do their arcing shot. But they're very good if they can just shoot straight, 45 or so angle. Otherwise, not all that great. Do note though they're relatively low cost. 590 gold coins, 580 for the Bladesman, 580 for the Guard. So relatively cheap early units, even though, but you pay for what you get, and you don't get the greatest units. There are 2 units of cavalry at this early tier, Thorn Riders and Mounted Crossbows. So Thorn Riders are just useful cavalry to break the enemy or to rout or to chase them down when they're running away. They're not very good at actually hitting the enemy and killing them in that charge, because whilst their charge bonus is 6, their attack is only 4, which lets them down a little bit. They do have a spear, which is a bonus, But their secondary attack is 6, so they're okay cavalry, much better than some militia cavalry of other nations, but they're not outstanding cavalry. Average morale response is handy, and they actually get a bonus against the Easterling Cataphract Cavalry, which is the Bodyguards unit and the Lok in Asurim unit. So the heavy Cataphract unit for Rune, they get a direct bonus against that, which is quite nice. But no other bonus against. You don't get a bonus against all horses, only Rune's Cataphracts. And then we have the mounted crossbows. I think this might be the only mounted crossbow unit in the whole game, actually, if memory serves. They are, again, effective against armor with their crossbows. Their missile attack is slightly lower, but their melee attack is slightly higher than their dismounted counterparts. Their defense is about the same. It is the same. Their charge is only 5. So once they've finished with their crossbows, they're not really very good at being cavalry. Their only real purpose once they're out of the crossbows is, again, to rout enemy units and to chase down those that are running away. Whereas I said the Thorn Riders would do the same job. They will at least charge the enemy-ish. They will charge the enemy. You might not kill many, but you will kill some. But the mounted crossbowmen will kill even less. So they are only really useful when you're using them for their actual crossbows. Okay, and then we come to what is the most likely break for the barracks event. Remember that this may not be the case, and these 2 units, and certainly some of the later ones, may well come before the barracks event. But this line is roughly where it takes place. And there are 2 remaining units left before you make your choice. And these units are very cool, because these ones are a bit later game, and you may well choose a human or elven by this point, so these units will come out at the same time as these other ones. They actually have elves and humans in the roster. So Dorwinion Protectors and Dorwinion Men-at-Arms. We'll start with the Men-at-Arms. This is a shield and spear unit, as you can see, and they have elves mingled in amongst the humans, which is very, very cool. They are just a solid spear unit. 4 attack, which isn't that great. Spear units don't tend to have a high attack. 3 charge, but a 15 defense. Which at least means they can hold the line well. Good morale response means they won't break too easily. And they cost 750, which still is not that expensive yet. So a pretty good unit all round. And then we have the Dorwinion Protectors, one of the few strike infantry that you actually get. Most of your infantry is holding the line or sword and board. And Dorwinion Protectors have a 14 attack. It's not effective against armor, but it's still outrageously high. They have an 8 charge, which is a wonderful bonus, and 17 total defense. They have very good morale and good morale response, but they do cost 1,025 gold coins for the privilege. So they are costly. Now this is the only unit where there might be, I should say, there is a chance that this unit is actually human only. But I'm fairly certain that it was human only, and instead we changed it to be available no matter who you choose. But I could well be wrong in that regard, and it may be human only, so do note that. However, the Men-at-Arms are definitely, whichever choice you choose, you get those. And I am pretty confident that the Protectors are the same. So there we are. Right, and then we come to the later choice. So we'll start with the humans, who are all on the left, or if there aren't 2 tiers, they're just lined up how they would be. So you get an entry-level tier of elites, and then a secondary, and that's not the same with your archers, though, and nor is that the same with your cavalry. So we'll start with infantry, with 2 of the coolest units, the Regent's Axe Guard and the Regent's Spear Guard. The Axe Guard are the other strike infantry unit that you get, and there is a third, though, so is another, I should say, not the other, another. They are effective against armor, but their attack is slightly lower to compensate. Their defense is 14, so they and they have good morale and good morale response, so they are actually, rather unfortunately, worse than the Dorwinion Protectors, but they do cost less. So that is a nice bonus. Their charge is 6, the Dorwinion Protectors' charge is 8. So it would be more true to really put that unit in the middle here, between those 2, so it comes in a little bit later. But, so the Regent's Axe Guard are a slightly worse version of the Protectors, but do not forget they are effective against armor. Which means, and remember that doesn't double their attack, it halves the enemy's armor. So in certain cases they could be more aggressive than the the Protectors, because the Protectors will do a flat 14 no matter who they attack, whereas the Regent's Axe Guard could take a unit with, say, 20 armor and cut that down to 10, thus giving them, in a very basic approximation, an 18 attack. So they are a very useful unit to also have. This one is better against trash, this one is better against elites, basically. You also get the Regent's Spear Guard, who are just a better spearman unit than the Men-at-Arms. Their attack is 6 compared to 4, their charge is the same, but their defense is 20 compared to 15. And they cost a little bit more, not much more, about 100 gold coins more. So they are just outright better than the Men-at-Arms in every way. The same bonuses, same morale response, but just better stats. So they are the better choice, and they only cost 100 gold coins more, which is nice. You get 2 archer units if you side with the humans. You get the famous Athala Rangers, who are only available in regions surrounding the River Running. Or is it all of Ravanion? Basically, they're available in Ravanion, as it says there, from Mirkwood to Dorwinion. They are rangers, human rangers at that, so very high accuracy, 220 meter range, 32 missiles, 6 missile attack with a 7 melee attack. Charge is quite low though, and the defense is not that great, so elite units will chomp these guys up for breakfast, but they will hold their own against early tier units in melee. As archers, they are outstanding, and as you can see, they can hide anywhere. You also get the Regent's Bowguard, who are again crossbows, but we kept that in accuracy in because, I don't know, there's something, it suggests a history to the unit. Alright, they are called Bowguard, but they have crossbows now, but maybe when they were founded they had arrows. They changed to crossbows, but as most, like, honorific titles, they didn't change the name. So they are still Bowguard, despite now using crossbows. Anyway, they're a crossbow unit. 10 missile attack, very good, effective against armor with that as well. 16 defense with a 6 melee attack means when the enemy does arrive, they will hold up really quite well. That 6 melee and 16 defense is better than the Dorwinion Men-at-Arms. So they are a very, very good unit, a no-brainer for your choice. They also still have the very medieval-looking shields on their back, a couple of them having Pavis-style shields, some of them having kites, and they just look really cool, I think. I think they look damned cool. So those are your archer and infantry options, and then we come to your elites. There are 2 elite units for the humans, and they're both of the Vintner Court, Knights and Paladins. And here they are. They are, of course, just a recoloured and slightly edited version of Dale's Earls. They are actually different. They do have different armour styles, and of course they are a different colour. And this is on purpose to show that Dale and Dorwinion are not that far from each other. And this shows their connection there. And so we've gone for some sort of game theme over designing an entirely new unit. Also because this model is very, very good and only rarely used in Dale, so we wanted to spread the love with it a bit as well. Now the Knights of the Vintner Court are your sharpened stake unit if you choose the humans. They have a 12 attack, 5 charge, 25 defense, so they are sound sword and shield warriors. Excellent morale, good morale response, and a bonus against that Cataphract cavalry again, even though they don't have a spear. They cost 1,200 gold coins, which is a fair amount, so they can be costly. But they are solid, and there are 127 of them for an elite unit, which is quite good. So just an all-round good little unit, really. And then finally, you get the Paladins of the Vintner Court, which is a mounted counterpart. Now, they don't have a spear, so their initial charge is not amazing. But they do have a 12 attack with an 8 charge anyway, so they will do a lot of damage in their attacks, but it would just be nicer if they had a lance or something first, but they don't on purpose. Their defense is 23, which is quite good. Now do note, whilst they are quite good elite heavy cavalry, they are not as good as Rune's elite heavy cavalry, and you will take losses if you charge them into Loke Inas Rim or the Bodyguard of Rune, so do watch out for that. So those are the humans. A quick glance then shows you that as the humans you get 3 choices. They're all quite cheap, and they come in relatively earlier than their elven counterparts. So as elves you get 3 units in the first tier and then 2 elites rather than 4 units in the first tier and 2 elites. We'll start with infantry again, and the only infantry option are the Avari warriors at this first elite tier. Now, Avari warriors are an interesting one because, again, they are strike infantry, but they don't have they don't have an armor-piercing bonus. They have an attack of 13 and a charge of 6. We compare them to the Protectors again, whose attack is 14 and charge is 8, making them actually aggressively worse. But their defense is better at 19. And they cost slightly more for the increased defense but less attack. There is also, unfortunately, the same number of them as Dorwinion Protectors. The Avari, however, have one thing that the humans don't have, which is excellent morale in most of their units. Excellent morale, good morale response. Again, bonuses in forests and snow, and a negative in deserts. They are basically slightly better versions of the Protectors, but they don't have the armor-piercing bonus. So it can be tricky to know when to recruit these or these. Ideally, you should just get both, because they are about on par with each other, and they cost about the same. All things considered, they're basically the same. And if you can get 2 strike infantry rather than 1, why would you not? Moving over to archers then. Now this unit is why a lot of people like the Avari, and this is for the shadows. The Avari shadows are basically an elven ranger, so they have a better melee attack at 8 compared to 7. They have 7 missile attack compared to the ranger's 6. They have a 4 charge compared to the 3. And they have a 15 defense compared to the 12, which is mostly in defense skill. So a more defense skill, 2 more defense skill, and 1 more armor stat. They cost 1,100, the rangers cost 925. But the real bonus of these is that their accuracy is exceptional. And remember that that is elven accuracy, so it really is on point. And otherwise, though, they have the same range and the same number of missiles. But they are a better version of the Athala Rangers in all aspects. They also hide anywhere, as you can see. So if it's a choice between the 2, go for the shadows. You can't actually train both of these at the same time, so that makes no sense whatsoever. So ignore that entirely. But if it's a choice between human and elves, some people do base it on their preferred ranger. But the shadows are really good. They will get so many kills. You also get an earlier tier cavalry unit, but no elite cavalry when you play with the elves. And those are the Avari Naharim. Named after the horse of Arome, the scout of the Valar, whose horse is called Nahar. And these are the Naharim, folk of Nahar, because they are outriders. And they're just cavalry archers. Their melee attack is 9, which is pretty damn good. Their missile is 6, which is also quite nice for a cavalry unit. Charge of 6 and a defense of 17, but they cost 1,125. Morale again is excellent. Their morale response is good. They get a bonus against the Cataphracts cavalry, high accuracy, 140 on the range, and 30 arrows. They are solid archer cavalry, one of the best archer cavalry units in the game, in fact. And they are relatively good when they then actually charge their enemy. But do note that they also have swords. So their charge is not going to be as great. And when compared as cavalry, the Paladins of the Vintner Court, for only 200 gold coins more, are substantially better in melee than the Naharim. They have a better charge, they have a better melee attack, and they have 6 more defense for only 200 gold coins more. So that's another aspect of the choice, elite cavalry or archer cavalry. And then we come to the elites. There are 2, and this is perhaps the most famous, the Morroquendi Protectors. Now their visuals have been enhanced dramatically since the last version, and they now look up to scratch, I think. They look much, much better. And they no longer have the really weird triangular pointed helmet that made them look like aliens. They now just have masks, and the odd one has, so you can see the helmets under the hoods, but they've been refined. They are pikemen. And their attack is 8, and their charge is 6, and their defense is 24, which I'm pleased to say puts them in the bracket of best pikemen in the game. They are right up there with the 1st Legion of Khazad-dûm, who I think are the best pikemen in the game. Morroquendi Protectors are hot on their heels. They have excellent morale, good morale response, but it's not locked. So even though it says they do not falter, they will run away. But in the very rare circumstance that you actually get them killed, it's not common. It's not common. They cost 1,400 though, so very expensive, and their replenishment, of course, is slow. Whilst in theory, or in practice, the humans do only actually have 1 extra unit, the replenishment time for the elves is about half that of the humans. So for the cost and time that you would be able to get, say, 2 of each of these units, you would have more than have enough of maybe 3 or 4 of each of these. depending on which one it is. You see, some of them train quicker than others. So it's not necessarily about choice when I say the size is larger. It's about the actual volume of units you have in your army. And I can't show you that because that's campaign map only aspect, and we'd have to be after the barracks event anyway. And then lastly though, the Morroquendi Sentinels. Elite archers, very elite archers. As I say, these are up there with Elder Rinway and Hairy Bang and Elbereth Sentinels. All of the above. They can use sharpened stakes, they're the stake unit for the elves. Melee attack is 10 when they finish with their arrows. Missile attack is 9, 24 defense. Excellent morale, good morale response. They have slightly less range than the Rangers on purpose. Accuracy is slightly lower than the Shadows, again on purpose. And the missiles, though, are 32. But do remember that when these people are finished with their ridiculously high arrow damage of 9, they're then really solid warriors. Their defense is only 1 less than the Knights of the Vintner Court, with a same charge and an attack that's only 2 lower. And they only cost 150 gold coins more, and they have an arrow aspect on top of their already solid defense and attack stats. A really, really elite unit. But as I say, and as I can only warn you a few times, they're really rare. You will not get many of these. This is not like Imladris or the Woodland Realm or Mirkwood, where once you get to the elite aspect, if your nation is large enough, this makes up the core of your army. These will be rare throughout the game. They're hard to get. Now, Dorwinion has so many units that I had to put the bodyguard over here in an ally. But I also put a few units in here to show you what the armor upgrades look like if you side with the elves. So starting off, we've got the Thorn Guard, and this is what they look like when you side as Elven. They get golden armor instead of silver mail. And behind them are the Men-at-Arms. That's what they upgrade to look like when you side with elves. So the humans get elven armor and the elves get elven armor. Everyone gets elven armor. You get elven armor. You get elven armor. I thought that the protectors might get an upgrade, but they don't, suggesting heavily that they come in on the human side, and I got that completely wrong. The High Paladins. This is your bodyguard unit, and this is what they look like when upgraded if you side with the elves. So your bodyguard gets an upgrade and wears elven armor as well. Which looks very Oblivion-esque to me, I think. It doesn't look like Oblivion Elven armor, but it just looks like armor from Oblivion. It looks like the kind of thing something in Oblivion would wear. There's your Thorn Crossbows with the armor upgrade, and I thought the Vineyard Levy's got an upgrade, but they don't. But to finish off the video then, before we fight whoever is next, the High Paladins are the Dorwinion Bodyguard, and unfortunately I cannot show you their stats because my army is not close enough to them. And that is how the game works. Oh dear, no, stay there. Come and stand there, see if that's close enough. Don't think it will be. No. Alright, we'll run a unit over as soon as the battle starts, and I'll tell you their stats. But they're just solid two-handed swordmen, really. Right, all of you, come together. You're going to want to group up with your allies, so stand over here. Oh, 2 lanes, very nice. Go over to the AI. Let's get rid of that, and let's get rid of that. So, whilst our cavalry charge is over, we'll just speed that up. Who do we think we're up against this time? Place your bets. Have your guesses. Who do we think it is? Quite a lot of blue going on over there, but there's some red as well. That's interesting. And some silvers and greys. Mostly blue, though. And a blue outline as well, if that helps. As we circle back around, and we come to the obvious conclusion, of course, that it is Dale. And there's the Barding Herd. They are the Barons, or oh, in fact, we can look at that right now. Are you their elite cavalry unit over here as well? Yes. So they do have visual differences. This is the Earls, the late game elite Dale cavalry unit. Note the segments on the armor and the covered faces in the helmets. And then if we just jump back over to the High Paladins, which is the Dorwinion bodyguard unit, you'll note that they wear A, gold armor, B, a different helmet, and they have this furry hood. If we jump back over to the cavalry, though, the Paladins, there, you'll see some of them have the breastplate, an entirely different breastplate. So they are actually visually different from the Earls and Barons of Dale, but they do share some similarities. So finally, the High Paladins. They have a 14 attack with a two-handed sword. They're not effective against armor. Do bear out for that. 26 total defense with a 6 charge. They are excellent aggressive strike infantry. They are low in number, of course, and they unfortunately get hounded by Rune's bodyguard, who will now massacre them. But they are excellent infantry against places like Dol Guldur, Dale, Erebor, because they just have that very high attack with a high defense to compensate. It's rare to have a two-handed bodyguard, but I think it's nice. They're good. Alrighty, so let's speed it back up so our armies meet. Siege equipment firing off as it always does. Dali and Billman charging in, but they're more concerned with our allies over there. Charge the Naharim into some swordmen. That'll go poorly. Let's just leave them to it.
Very much in our favor. Victory will be ours.
There's the Hobbit-inspired Royal Guardsman. Bodyguard for Dale. There's the very cool-looking Hearth Guard, one of Dale's now finest units. Dale's had a little bit of love in version 2.2, to be honest. Barding Herd making their way through there. A couple of units of them. Our Protectors are up against some Barons and some Lake Town Pikemen, again inspired by the Hobbit movie. There's Ravanian Gedrorts in the background. We've already touched on the Herd. And there's Earls. Looking very, very cool indeed. They have a very dark medieval kind of theme, I think. Oh, and they're charging into pikemen. Stand your ground, Morroquendi. It would be an absolute massacre. There are 101 Morroquendi Protectors, and there were 65 Earls. And they've gotten slaughtered. 20 or so Earls just paid, and 4 Protectors went down. And that is Dale's finest cavalry unit. So, but then that's always going to happen. It's elite pikes against cavalry. It doesn't matter how good your cavalry is. They're going down if they're charging elite pikes. There's Iwothiodar Horse Guards, who have actually been changed in the next version, just to confuse you all entirely. In the Gundabad release, the Iwothiodar Horse Guards will be cavalry archers, before they are then sound medium cavalry. So that is Dorwinion, and that concludes the video. So I do hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you may have learned something from it. And if you have any questions, then do pop them in the comments below. But until we speak again, dear friends, Navar Naden Padimad Melonin, and farewell.